There's only 2 left. And Clear Channel's Live Nation just bought House of Blues. There's only 2 national concert promoters. So basically, there's no leverage for artists, limited choice for consumers in that old model, right? So now we're going to get to the hopeful stuff. This is the last negative slide. But if you think about this as a renaissance, what are some groups in the past that have controlled renaissances, or this grassroots flowering of creativity? Who would want to control that?
Not just the average person, it would be the ruling aristocrats.
Right, the elite, yeah, the powerful,
the people who control the means,
the money,
through the channels where people could communicate, but now the channel is so accessible that anyone can use it.
Exactly.
To its fullest extent.
Yeah.
I would add the churches.
Judges?
Churches.
Oh, churches, yeah, especially in previous renaissances when the church was powerful, yeah. And now today I would argue it's corporations. And you all know this. You probably all know that 20 states have laws on the books that prohibit you from creating your own broadband network. 20 states. Who's writing those rules? Cable and the phone companies, right? That's why download speeds are faster than upload. They don't want all of us putting up videos, because guess what? Then we're not going to be watching their crap anymore, right? We're all entertaining and informing and trading and buying and selling from each other, which means we're not buying from Viacom anymore. We're not buying from NBC. I love that, But they're freaked out by it, because they're competing with everyone in this audience. They're competing with the audience itself. So they rewrite laws. They wrote the Sonny Bono Copyright Protection Act. Doesn't that sound lovely? Sonny Bono Copyright Protection Act. What it did was it extended copyright 24 years. So now it's 74 years plus an author's life. Why is that important? Because stuff doesn't go into the public domain like it used to. You know how Disney got rich? Name a couple of movies that Disney did in the 20s, how they built their empire. See Snow White? Yeah. Anyone else? Alice in Wonderland? Pinocchio? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. What were all of these? Where were all these properties? They were in the public domain, right? They were fairy tales. So Disney made a fortune off the public domain. And you know what happened? Mickey Mouse was set to go into the public domain. So that's why they wrote this legislation. Because they didn't want Mickey Mouse to go into the public domain. Today, right now, Mickey Mouse would be in the public domain if it wasn't for the Sonny Bono Copyright Act. So what used to be in the public realm of knowledge is increasingly in the hands of corporations. And they're writing the rules. So that, I could go on and on and on. I mean, there are numerous examples. 13 states have laws on the books that prohibit you from creating a public access station, et cetera, et cetera. But these are the things we've got to be careful of, and that's why in the media, included in the second half of the book, ownership, right? Own your own low-power FM radio station, your own public access station. Use Creative Commons instead of copyright. So the other way corporations do this, how many folks watch American Idol? American Idol fans, yeah? So this is the first year's contract that every contestant has to sign when they go on American Idol. This is that other insidious way corporations take over our very minds, our intellectual property. These are 16, 17-year-old kids. Look what they sign. I hereby grant to producer, right? The producer being Simon Fuller, right, of 19 Management and Fox and News Corp, right? I hereby grant to Simon Fuller the unconditional right throughout the universe in perpetuity to use Simula to portray my name, right? This is intergalactic stuff that these kids are signing, right? And then at the bottom it says, I may reveal and or relate information about me of a personal, private, intimate, surprising, defamatory, disparaging, embarrassing, or unfavorable nature that may be true and or false. They could just make stuff up about it. And Pluto's no longer a planet, but if it was, and Fox had an affiliate there, they own your rights to that planet too, over on Pluto. So what's going on here? On the one end of this negotiation, you've got tons of lawyers, billions of dollars, Rupert Murdoch and American Idol. And on the other hand, you got this little 16-year-old girl or boy, right? No lawyers, parents like, oh yeah, American Idol, they're going to be the next American Idol. Every one of us too, we're texting them in, yeah, I want that person to basically be a slave. I don't need to use that term lightly. Indentured servitude of American Idol, right? Who do you think makes the money off all those texts? You think the artist gets that money? Oh, okay, thanks. Right, so these are the next, I don't know if you watch VH1's Behind the Music, anybody? But you don't have to go very far to see examples of very famous musicians who've been completely abused by one-sided contracts that they signed like this when they were a young age. You know, Mickey and I were talking about this earlier. Michelle Schacht, you know Michelle Schacht? 15 years ago, she sued her label $1 million based on the 13th Amendment. You know what the 13th Amendment was? What's that?
Abolishing slavery.
The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. And she sued her record label and won based on the 13th Amendment. This is why, you know? Because Billy Joel had to go from New York in hiding in the 1970s to LA. And he was literally playing in a beat-up old bar for a year to break his contract. He hid from his manager. And eventually what came out of that was Piano Man, you know, the song and the album, Piano Man. So, I mean, these are, yeah, Mickey, do you want to jump in?
Fogarty.
Yep, John Fogerty.
Reznor.
Trent Reznor. Yeah. So these are some of the pioneers of saying, you know what, this model doesn't work anymore. Well, why, I'll ask you that. Why do people enter into abusive contracts? Yeah.
Because they don't see the darkness at the end of the tunnel. They just see light. They think that they're going to make it, become big stars, and then
Right.
have all this money, and then this is going to harm them.
Sure, yeah, okay.
Because when there's so much coalescence inside of these markets where there's only going to be two large record companies, they don't have much choice between these two record companies
Right.
or going with an independent label where they're not connected.
Yeah, no choices, yeah.
And also, the whole concept of what is successful is defined by the people who, you know, who want this to happen.
That's
So-
right, right. And they love
They
scarcity,
fall into it.
right? This is winner take all. If this isn't a scarcity model, I don't know what, right? If one guy wins, everybody else sucks. You gotta be kidding me. I would give my right arm to have 7 million people voting me in. Give me those email addresses right now. And you're a loser? How could you be a loser if 4 million people just voted for you? You know, this is a concept of everyone, I believe everyone in this room is probably talented in some way that should be recognized, you know? That whole winner take all model. But really, it's people enter into abusive relationships because they're not aware. They're not aware they're in it. They're so deep that the system has so marinated our brains that we believe that this is the road to success, right? And yet we all know, if you watch a couple of episodes of Behind the Music, this is the road to tyranny and abuse. So then the next step is, how do you get out of it? Well, you got to know that there are choices. Fortunately today, there are lots and lots of choices. And that's what I'd like to focus on, instead of all this negativity. But I want to bring this back to kind of an important point. If the empire, for example, is built by stealing land from indigenous people, should I repeat that? If an empire, for example, any empire, is built by stealing land from indigenous people, during an agricultural age and an industrial age, you need people to work it. You need physical labor. Am I right? You need women to work in the sweatshops. You need kids to work in coal mines. You don't need labor unions. God forbid you should have an 8-hour day and weekends, right? You have slaves working the land. But we're now in an information age. We're not in an agricultural, physical, industrial age. We're in an information age. So how will the empire be perpetuated in an information age?
Stealing information commons.
Intellectual property, right? Yeah.
Changing laws so that we won't be able to produce our own media on Twitter and YouTube. And imposing advertisements on these free medias.
Right, right. Yeah.
Industrialized information,
Yeah.
manufactured.
Absolutely. It's almost like there's not a market for Britney Spears, right? There's more like there's a market for the teenage girl. And as soon as Britney Spears is too old, Hannah Montana jumps right in, right? There's always somebody to take the place to get that screaming teen girl demographic. That's the machine. I think that's that industrial age machine, and it's almost like gotten to be a science now. They know what those kids want. They bring in somebody who's going to satisfy that niche. But what happens to critical thinking? What happens to, you know, our ability to affect the grand narrative? And I think that's the hopeful part of this presentation. This is all the stuff you need to know. Like if you're an author, every one of these rights is what you're going to sign away. If you get a deal with a major publisher, they're going to take all these rights. That's the boilerplate contract. So for example, if I wanted to come out and speak to you, I'd have to get permission. Why? Because they steal my rights. They're not in the business of exploiting it. They're certainly not helping me get any gigs. I got the United Nations in Colombia and Missouri on my own. Why do they want my rights? They just want to eat them up.